Are you sick of scrolling through Netflix and Hulu searching for movies that are high quality and family friendly? Christian Cinema has thousands of movies available on demand that you can watch anytime, anywhere. When you sign up for a giving membership, a premium offering from Christian Cinema, you can watch 5 free movies every month. Learn more about becoming a giving member at givingcompany.com/giving membership and start watching great movies today. The other side of the road is safe, where we sidestep being bothered and avoid getting involved. But rolling up your sleeves and boldly going where few dare to tread, that's walking through Samaria. Each week on our podcast, we introduce you to the special few who walk in the spirit of the Good Samaritan. On behalf of the Giving Company and your hosts, David Hendrickson and Dan Riveros, welcome to the Walking Through Samaria podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Walking Through Samaria podcast. I'm your host, Dan Riveros, with my co-host,
David Hendrickson.
What's up?
Hey.
How you doing?
We're here.
We're here. Live in the flesh, man. What's new?
The mask mandate was lifted yesterday.
Oh, man.
Not that really affected us here in the Giving Company podcast room, but
I got my dad so mad at me the other day because he was telling me, he's like, China's going under lockdown again. I'm like, man, I don't know. That's just not even registering in my brain.
I know.
Man.
I'm
like, no way.
Dan, to our listeners, Dan and I are obviously in Georgia. You probably know that. And it's been fairly open here for a while. So much so that when you get in an Uber or you go to the airport, it's almost weird.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make any medical comments at all, but it's just the way of life here in Georgia has been without a mask for quite some time.
I appreciate it so much when the Uber driver gives me the option.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, a couple of them. I mean, not all of them, but
yeah.
I mean, I'm at the point where you got to tell me.
Yeah.
Put it on.
Yeah.
Right
there you go.
Yeah. So who do we got today, man?
Hey, we have Matt McKee in the house. Matt, welcome.
What's up, everybody?
And he's live.
Yeah.
Like
I'm in the studio.
I can see you
no
guys.
mask,
We're here.
It's perfect. Yeah.
It's good because when I wore a mask in the podcast room, which I have done in the past, my glasses would fog up.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't see anything. So
yeah,
this is better.
I think we're going to look back on all those days like we really did that.
We really did that.
We really did that.
I know. Now there's, it just creates another debate and more division, and it's just too bad.
I saw yesterday someone said, you know what, we've been having the same argument for 2 years now. I'm bored. Can we move on?
Man,
I think that's really where we are. I'm bored.
I was bored 2 weeks into it. I was like, hey man, you do you and I'll do me. Let's keep it that way.
That seems to be okay.
Not mad at you. Do not get mad at me.
So the biggest controversy now is the Bethel music people playing music on the plane. Did you see that? So that's like a whole other
that video is
another battle now. Yeah.
Over 30 million views.
Has it really?
Yeah. So I mean, it took fire, and and it wasn't just Christians going, this is great, or even other Christians going, this is awful.
Was cringe. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Both sides there. And then you had other religions that are getting in on it going, what would happen if my religion did this? And you're like, well, I've been on an Etihad flight in Abu Dhabi. Yeah. It happens. Okay.
I got to be honest. I would have stopped. I would have said, no, we're not doing that.
It seemed awkward. We got to try and get those people on the podcast, Dan, and we're going to be like, guys, hey, tell us what was the motivation here? What's up? Anyway.
Love to hear the side of the story. But for me personally, I love gospel music.
Yeah.
Love gospel music. The second it's acoustic and it's worship, you lost me. You lost me.
Yeah.
Can't do it. I'm like, no. This is cringe.
So it was a private chartered flight. So more than likely, they were asked to do this.
Could have been. Yeah.
Right? It wasn't like, on a Delta.
They were headed to Ukraine? Is that true?
Coming back from.
Or coming back?
Yeah,
okay.
one or the other. So,
try that on a Spirit flight.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Alaska Air.
Yeah. So, you're looking and you're going, okay, like when you look at who's in the plane and, you're trying to analyze as much as you can because it's a very short video. You go, I don't know. Like, what's awkward are all the other people in the video going, I can't believe we're being filmed right now.
Yeah.
I think that's the awkwardness of it. Yes, the playing of the music in the plane.
It was so bad.
Yeah, well, we could talk about that. But at the end of the day, I think it's the facial expressions of people on the plane going, I didn't expect to be filmed.
Yeah.
I think that's the cringe. Yeah. And that, I think, says a lot about where we are right now, just as a society of, what we went through with the whole Google Glass and people going, wait a minute, you're now filming me?
Yeah,
and
right.
anytime someone's phone comes up and you're like, oh no, I'm now being filmed, I think that awareness is where
That's an interesting observation, for sure.
A lot of tension is now being seen.
So Matt's going to be our anti-controversy guy, right? Like, he's going to speak from the data and the technology and all that as we talk about protecting kids. So Matt, I'm going to read your bio to our listeners, and then we are going to dive right in. Matt McKee is just another guy trying to make a difference. He's an author, speaker, entrepreneur, investor, and ordained pastor. He has helped found 3 technology companies over the course of his career and invested in more than a dozen others. He is passionate about the intersection of parenting and technology and considers it one of his specialties, having spoken at places like South by Southwest, the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, and the National PTA. Matt is also the author of Parent Chat, the technology chat for every family and parenting in a tech world, which has enabled him to share what he has learned about raising kids in the digital age.
Well,
awesome.
It sounds like I've done a lot. I'm really not that old, but I just keep creating things. That's at the end of the day what's happening.
Well, it's an interesting combination of experiences and titles. So we're going to dive into that a little bit later. But let's kind of talk personal to kick off. You and I have known each other, since like Thanksgiving of last year. And one of the things I always notice is what's the area code that's on people's cell phones, right? And we don't memorize phone numbers anymore because they're all on our phone. But you have a 513 area code, and the reason that sticks out to me is I also lived on an Ohio River town, Louisville, Kentucky, growing up. After moving there from Chicago. And there's probably a little bit of a rivalry between Louisville and Cincinnati before the Kentucky Derby. There's a steamboat race between the Belle of Louisville and the Delta Queen, which is out of Cincinnati. These are useless pieces of information, but give us a little bit of how a 513 area code guy kind of winds up in Atlanta. Give us a little bit of your journey.
Yeah, so I was actually born and raised in Kentucky. I was born in Lexington, grew up around.
Then we're good.
Born and raised in Danville, raised in Richmond. My mom ended up graduating from Eastern Kentucky University,
which is in Richmond, right? Danville is Center College.
Yeah, Center
I think.
College.
Yeah.
So got just around the city of Lexington. We never. I've still got family who lives in Lexington, but grew up a big Blue fan. Like
there you go.
I still bleed blue.
College athletics, Dan. That's what we always talk about.
I got to bring it up.
The Kentucky Wildcats.
You have
there you go.
So anyway, from there, ended up playing soccer in college at a small little Baptist school called Cumberland College at the time.
Okay.
From there, went to Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, where I was on staff at a church, and that's when I was ordained. From there. Now, from fellowship, I then from Dallas Fort Worth, I moved to Cincinnati. I moved there because my brother and his wife were there, and we wanted to get back towards family.
Yeah,
I like Lexington, but I wanted a bigger city after being in Dallas Fort Worth. So ended up went on staff at a church up there in Cincinnati. And then while there, I launched some different companies, launched a website company, launched an app company. I really got into tech. I actually stood in line for the very first iPhone, and I hacked it and was running apps on it before the App Store ever opened up. And it was one of those things where I looked at it and I said, wow, this is an opportunity. So started an app company that then one of our first clients was a client here in Atlanta. And they asked, hey, would it be possible if you also moved down? So I was like, yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
But I kept that 513 area code. And the reason I kept it, and this is, just in my little span there, because I've lived in Atlanta now a little over 12 years. In that span of time, my mom has gone from, hey, I pick up a phone that's attached to a wall through a cord, and I dial 7 numbers that I remember. 2, why don't you just send me a text?
Wow.
So the reason I kept the 513 area code, one was because all these different people in Cincinnati and all these different friends and all these different people already had the number that they had stored in a device that I knew they would never remember. But really more importantly, it was because my mom could pick up a phone, dial 7 numbers, and it got to me.
Yeah.
Now, what's nuts, of course, since then is my mom probably couldn't tell you my number. And when I call her, she's like, why are you calling?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's much more efficient ways that we can do things today. Why didn't you just send me a text? So that's why I still have a 513 number. I also have an Atlanta number. And if you ever receive my Atlanta number, I'm just going to give the dirty little secret now. It's not one I check a lot. So that means we are probably, I'm giving you some Google Voice number that I will eventually get to.
Right.
We'll go from there.
So one of the things that stood out about your bio, and you talked about it a little bit just now, is this combination of author, speaker, and pastor. We see that all the time. I mean, Andy Stanley, author, speaker, and pastor. Crawford Loritz, author, speaker, and pastor. Tony Evans, author, speaker, and pastor. T.D. Jakes, author, speaker, and pastor. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Christine Kane. You can go down the list.
Goes on.
But you have entrepreneur and investor in there as well. And you mentioned you have an affinity for tech, but there's lots of people that do amazing things on their social media accounts, but aren't necessarily investors in tech and starting tech companies. When did you sort of lean in this direction? Because you're working probably still at the church in Cincinnati, and you're doing pretty substantive technology things at the same time.
So it all started really when I was at Fellowship Church in Grapevine, Texas. I was 22 years old, was on staff, and we just launched things. We were launching curriculum in conjunction with Lifeway. So we had this thing that was out there in thousands of churches. We were changing out our sets every 6 weeks. We were launching books. We were launching tech companies. That's where Fellowship Technologies came from. Literally one thing after another, not just including campuses. So got to see the church grow from 1 campus to 5, from 10,000 people to 25,000. But it really was this idea of I could write a devotional for what happens after sports. That devotional, we then figured out, okay, how do we go to a publisher? How do we then offer that at our conference? So that path of how do you design, not only that, how do you create, then how do you design, then how do you launch?
Yeah.
When you're 22 to 27 years old and that's your upbringing and you're doing it within a faith community, like it just gets entrenched in you to where you're like, I need to launch things. I need to see that impact and see. Now,
so that's a correlation, right? You think of churches launching new ministries, launching new initiatives kind of all the time, launching new programs. So,
and in essence, what they're doing is entrepreneurial activity.
Yeah, exactly.
One after another after another. And it gave us the ability to fail. So every 6 weeks, I was doing another series for youth and kids, and you're like, okay, well, let's see what this series does. Well, that set stunk, and that series didn't go as well as I wanted, so let's rethink that. And having to deal with volunteers instead of employees, and having like all of those at scale and seeing things grow, then you just kind of get the confidence to go, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
Then you go to a church in Cincinnati. I was at Horizon Community Church. And Horizon was very interesting because it was started by several families that said, we don't want to be the biggest church in the world. We want to be very intentional with the people that we're trying to reach. And those families just happened to be some of the richest families in the Cincinnati area. So I got to be around different executives at Procter & Gamble. I got to be around
P&G Town. That's right. Cincinnati.
Around different business people that were also buying and selling companies for a living. So I would start a Bible study, and I would have different, like literally VCs and private equity guys in my Bible study. And I'd go, it must be the coolest thing in the world right now that you're going to go buy a company. And he was like, it's just business. He goes, it doesn't help the heart. It doesn't. I'm like, but you're being able to utilize your gifting, and you're being able to do something that as a pastor, I don't think I could ever do. So it got me really interested. I got a mentor who I had breakfast with every week for like 5 years. We went through the personal MBA program. So I learned how to read a balance sheet. I learned how to do a P&L, like all the different, business things that you have to go through. And then from there, started launching real companies, not just products, but how do you add value? And one of the very first ones I did was a naming company. So we would help name products and services and other companies. And then I was like, oh, that was fun, but like, there's got to be something else. And then I started a web company. I started an app company. I say I've found 3 tech companies because those 3 are the ones that actually made some money.
Gotcha.
I've started a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But what happens is you start these things, and then when you sell one, you go, wow, that was pretty great.
Let's run it back.
Let's see if we can do it again, and let's start investing in other people. Gotcha. So that's how I went from entrepreneur to investor.
That's awesome.
So would you say the advice for new entrepreneurs is don't be scared to fail?
Oh, 100%.
Is that the biggest one?
Well, you have to, the end in mind is never failure.
Yeah.
It's always just another degree that you get to have.
Iteration. Yeah.
So you have to take all of it as hey, that was just tuition. That tuition got me to check another box.
Yeah.
So again, it's not failure. It's the end goal. And the end goal could be that we're going to sell this, or the end goal could be, hey, I learned a lot, all these different things. People try to say failure is, is the number one thing that you can learn as an entrepreneur. I think at the end of the day, I'm not sure that's correct. Success is pretty successful teacher as well.
Yeah.
And learning how to add value, I believe, is the biggest thing that you can learn as an entrepreneur.
That's good. That's good. So I want to, have a little fun here for a second, go off script and connect some dots. So
Sure.
Rhonda and I my wife, Rhonda and I, and my son and his girlfriend went to Brownsbridge for Easter. For all of our listeners, Brownsbridge is a campus of North Point, big North Point community churches here in Alpharetta. We reference it often on this podcast. We talked to Debbie Causey, right, Dan? Just our last podcast about how many campuses are there. And I don't remember what she said, but 7 or 8, right? They're in Woodstock and East Cobb and Buckhead and some of these popular places in Atlanta. Brownsbridge is up north. I think it's in Cumming. It might be in Dahlonega or Canton, but it's further north of the city than where we live. Anyway, we rolled in about 10 till for Easter service, which is not good, right? So no seats in the auditorium, no seats in the balcony. They had an outside, screen set up and little tailgate chairs, that you could go get and sit. And we had an incredible time having Easter service outside. Here's what we said after the service, Matt. The best Easter service we've been to was outside at Fellowship Church in Dallas, Texas. I think that was on Lake Grapevine, right? Is the lake right outside the campus? But their sunrise Easter service back in 2006, I think that was favorite Easter service of all time. I don't think you were there then.
I wasn't. I was there from 2000,
awesome.
2005, and got to see just amazing things and amazing people. Like when you look back at who was at Fellowship at that time and what they've gone on to do, it's things like, Terry Storch and what he's been able to help Bobby do with the Bible app. And he helped start, YouVersion. We were a bunch of entrepreneurs is what we were. And we couldn't think big enough and we couldn't dream big enough. And that's what has been pretty amazing to kind of see God continue to work and do amazing things from a group of people that were all like, hey, let's see what's next.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then we got to chat about Cincinnati for just a second.
Sure.
So pretty great zoo.
Yes.
Kings Island.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The amusement park.
Some of the best roller coasters in America.
Skyline chili. Dan?
I have
chili with
I'm a chili guy.
Spaghetti noodles in it. What do you think of that? I mean, it's good.
It doesn't sound bad. Yeah, it doesn't sound bad.
And you got Joe Burrow. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on in Cincinnati.
I will say this. You either hate or love Cincinnati-style chili. It is truly like spaghetti noodles and then the chili. And then they add more cheese than they do noodles.
It's probably like the texture that throws people off.
It is unbelievable. Little hot sauce, you're good to go.
Oh,
texture doesn't bother me. I can kind of eat
it's good, man.
So I probably would like it.
It's good.
Yeah.
I mean, every time we make chili here, I get a pot of noodles going, and half the people in Georgia are like, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. So, well, tell us, to all of our listeners, before we got started, we got a little bit of a music sample from you, from your phone. Tell us about the fam. How's the fam doing, and what are they up to?
I've been married almost 23 years now. I was married when we were in college, and it's been an incredible ride with my wife, Jessica. She was actually on staff at Fellowship as well. And so she's been in ministry and, now volunteers and does all kinds of things actually at North Point. We're very much fans at North Point. And so our marriage continues to go strong. It is a blessing and a half.
Awesome.
And then we have two boys, one who's 17 and one who's 15. Our 17-year-old is a junior in high school. He's a Christian hip hop artist.
There you go.
You can go find him on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to music. His name's Patriot. So you can go find, he's now working on his third album. He's done a bunch of projects with other rappers. So it's
very cool.
It's kind of fun to see.
Yeah.
And then our freshman, his name's Aslan, of course, from C.S. Lewis, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The lion is named Aslan. He right now, he's got red hair. It's like strawberry blonde. It's
he
like
has to be with a name like Aslan. That like red hair just works.
It does, and he's trying to see how long he can grow it. Which is kind of fun. Right? He's just like, come on, let's see where it goes. But Aslan is an online gamer. In fact, for his high school, even though he's a freshman this year, he will be the president of the esports team at his high school. And more than likely, their teams will win state. They're in the competitions right now. There's a good chance that they could win in multiple games.
Wow.
His game of choice is Rocket League. So he drives around this car and hits a soccer ball. And we'll see. We'll see how well they do. But his first semester, they ended up 8th in the state. The other team at his school ended up 1st in the state.
Okay.
And it's nuts to me that you can play a video game today and get a scholarship to college.
Yeah.
Because all three of those guys who won are going to go to college and they're going to get scholarships.
They're going to game in college.
I know there's some countries where like stadiums sell out to watch people game.
Yeah. So, to say that we're immersed as a family within tech, I think would be an understatement.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's pretty incredible to see your kids thrive in the ways that God has gifted them and in the way that, and I also think it's hilarious that to be a part of an esports team, you have to go get a physical.
That's funny.
And we had to buy
so you
a
could
uniform.
Like stare at a screen and your eyes not get red and close shut.
Were either of you guys video games people? Video game guys?
No,
I wasn't really.
No. I enjoyed Atari. And I enjoyed Super Mario Brothers, like Nintendo early days. Yeah. Once it got past, Jordan versus Bird on the on that console. Mario Kart. I didn't make it much past Mario Kart.
I play a little bit in college, like Xbox Live, like Call of Duty and stuff like that.
But
not to the point where like I was great at it or like it took up too much of my time or anything like that. I think about getting one sometimes though.
Yeah, I mean, go back to our day, Matt. It was Defender and Pac-Man and Centipede, and I mean, it's a whole different world now, right? I mean, in video games, it's just crazy.
There was an 80s game called Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I don't know if any of y'all played that. And it's like an arcade style game. It's 300 levels. You get 4 lives to complete it all. And I definitely wasted away some
quarters. You threw some quarters in there.
No, just like in my parents' basement, just like for hours. Like I can do this.
That's awesome. I played a lot of ping pong in college.
Okay, that's good. I played a lot of euchre. Yeah. We were card players in college. That was it.
I know people on their phone who play games a lot, just like the little mindless games.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So technology. I mean, one of the things that's encouraging about this conversation is these are examples of technology good. So companies that you've started, value that you've created, Spotify, Apple Music, those things making access for artists much easier, right? So if you look at Patriot at a very young age has been able to publish. My son's going to have his first song on Spotify in the next couple weeks. You know, the access that technology gives artists. Online gaming is a way to sort of expand the athletic category and the scholarship category in college. These are all really good things. There's also some downside to technology, right? So let's change our conversation for a second to what you're doing now. Tell us about Bark, kind of how you got there and what Bark is all about.
Yeah. So, on my path to Bark, I actually helped, I was one of the very early investors and then also executives at another company called Circle. And Circle had a partnership with Disney, had a product that sat on the shelf at every Walmart, every Target, every Best Buy, called Circle with Disney.
Okay.
And so that really got me into this realm of how do you protect kids online? How do you look at technology and say, this is a safe environment for my kids? So that was the very first product that I brought to market after working in private equity, after having an exit, because we built 4,000 church apps and a bunch of other stuff.
Okay.
But I got passionate about this space because I said, this is one of the biggest fears, if not the biggest fear that parents have today. So let's see if we can solve it. And let's see if we can solve it with a huge company, right? And see what happens. And while I was there at Circle, there was this little company that went through Techstars here in Atlanta called Bark Technologies. It was started by a guy, his name's Brian Basin. Brian sold his company to Twitter. And when he sold it to Twitter, he said, hey, I'd like for my kids to be able to be on this platform, but it's not really a safe platform. So I've got to do something. So he went through Techstars. He then came out on the other side of Techstars, and I went, that technology, which is artificial intelligence, running inside of social media networks for you as a parent, and then sending you an alert or sending you a bark when something offensive or something objectionable happens.
Gotcha.
So that you don't have to see every post that your kid sees. You don't have to see every video on YouTube. You don't have to see every text message. But you as a parent do want to be alerted. Just like if you had a stranger or something dangerous happening, you'd want your dog to go bark and say, hey, here's an alert, like beware.
Got it.
So the same thing happens with artificial intelligence today, utilizing it to say, here's something objectionable, here's something offensive, or here's something that's really happening to your kid.
Yeah.
And because of that, we want to send you an alert and say, here's the next steps. Here's the conversation you need to have because your child is looking for pornography, or your child is depressed, or your child is having suicidal ideation, or they're being cyberbullied, or there's a bunch of different things that the AI is looking for.
Wow.
So while I was at Circle, I actually tried to buy Bark. I was like, Brian, why don't you just join us?
Yeah.
And he said no. He was like, that value is way too low. And, I had done some mergers and acquisitions before that, and I thought I was pretty decent at it. And Brian outsmarted me. So instead, in 2018, he said, why don't you come join me and grow this company, and we'll make it a big company instead of trying to utilize a big company.
Gotcha.
And that's when I agreed.
All right.
And so today I help lead Bark and the efforts that we are helping parents. The great news is 2018, it was not a very large company at all. And today we cover over 6 million kids in the United States. We're now live in South Africa. We just went live in Australia.
Yep.
So we're having some international distribution things that are happening. And then we also, we've actually helped over 5,000 kids who are imminently suicidal get help. We've helped stop 16 school shootings.
Wow.
And we've turned in over 1,000 online predators into the FBI.
Wow. Really? So let's dive into that a little bit more. When Bark is a technology for parents to get alerted, but obviously it's saving kids at the same time. I mean, you seem to be somebody who knows this reality really well. Talk about, like, what's at stake here? what are the dangers that technology presents to kids these days?
Well, I hate to say this, but this is the first time in history that suicide is the number 2 cause of teenagers for them to die. And the reason is, and we're seeing more and more studies of this. The more we stare at a screen, the more we crave a real relationship. So what's happening is we have this false sense of connection. We have this false sense of, hey, I'm being able to interact with all these different people, but it's actually just driving me to be more depressed. It's driving me to look at myself in a way that is not healthy, because I don't have as many likes as someone else, or I'm not getting the number of comments, or the comments that I am getting are not anywhere close. Because when we comment online, we don't comment with the ways that we would in real life. We comment in actually much meaner ways, or ways in which we would never comment to someone's face. And because of that, it's driving a lot of behavior and a lot of outcomes that we don't like to see. And as a parent, we really have to up our emotional intelligence more than anything else in helping our kids deal with all of the different things that are happening on tech. Because what we're seeing is, mom, dad sitting on a couch, doom scrolling Instagram, they're like, oh, or Facebook.
I love that term.
Right? Doom scrolling.
I love that term. Doom scrolling. Yep.
And that's really what it is. Yeah. Like 2 hours later, you're like, I didn't even want to look at this cat video. Yeah. Why am I, what's happening here? But, you're scrolling. So the ever-ending feed. Well, on the same couch, you have your son or your daughter who literally is also scrolling, but interacting in ways that you never thought possible, and doing things there that they're actually doing things a lot differently than you are, because they're asking a different question. And because they're asking a different question, parents go, oh, I can see them, but they're having to deal with so much more than the parents are, because the parents are asking the question, what will this do for me? There's some entertainment there. There's some some different things to make them more efficient and effective. What the kids are doing is, what will this do? So they're looking at apps, or looking at tech. They're looking at these things in a much more curiosity way, a much more adventure way, where parents are looking at this as a much more, hey, I just want to be more efficient. And because of that, kids are ending up in a totally different place than parents are. And parents falsely are saying, hey, no, they're using tech just like I am. So we really do need parents to start asking the question, what will this do? And when you ask that question, it will lead you in the same path that your kids are on.
Wow, that's good. I want to divert again for a second and talk about kind of the world of parenting today.
Sure.
You've given us some real insight into technology. And Dan and I are very committed to not talking about politics on this show. We're about talking about Good Samaritans and ways that Christians can show up in culture and society and do good in the name of the gospel. Like, that's what this show is about in light of the parable of the Good Samaritan. You don't have to look too far, though, to kind of see that parents are dealing with a lot of things that maybe they're not entirely sure how to deal with. At what age does sexuality get taught in schools? Who should be responsible for that? What is the role of parenting versus teachers versus other, influencers in a child's life? And I'm kind of thankful, my kids are even older than yours. I've got one in graduate school and one in college, and I'm not sure how I would be reacting as a parent in a school board meeting or a parent-teacher meeting or whatever it might be today. It does seem, though, that parents are getting a little more active. And whether that's necessarily 100% good or 100% bad, I'm not gonna make a comment on. But why do you think, parents are kind of getting more involved and maybe getting a stronger voice and looking for a platform and kind of banding together in kind of today's environment. What's going on in the hearts and minds of parents right now around the country?
I believe it's a lack of trust in institutions. And it's the institutions of not only large tech companies, but it's institutions of education. And it's also the institution of church.
Sure, absolutely.
Like when we grew up and our parents dropped us off and they're like, hey, the church is going to teach them, some great Bible studies and Bible stories. And now, but they're now seeing the outcomes, and the outcomes aren't matching with the reality of at least what they remember. So we always remember the past in beautiful ways. Oh, remember the 50s, the 70s, remember the 90s. Like you look back and you're like, oh, they were so great.
Yeah, life was easier back then. Right. Life was simpler back then.
So you remember some outcome because you lived through it and you're like, I'm not that bad of a person.
Yeah.
And then you look at your child and you're like, this isn't anywhere close to the outcome that I want. And institutions were very involved, from probably the 50s until the 2000s.
Yep.
And then there was a lack of trust and a breakdown of trust into those institutions. And because of that, parents, I think, are now going, okay, what really is being taught to my kid from an educational level? What really are my kids interacting with in terms of all the information that's happening out there? And what are they even being taught at church? Because that, again, from an educational standpoint, and does that line up with who we want to be as a family?
Yeah.
So I think you're seeing, and it's not a political stance, I truly believe it's a lack of trust. And it's them wanting to be involved on, we want as our family an outcome to happen. And it's not just because we live in a certain area, because all of those walls have been broken down. Doesn't matter what zip code you're in anymore.
Sure.
It really does matter as a nuclear entity, and it doesn't matter how messy your family is. Like, it's not, because you're a single parent or because, there's all these different aspects of family. No. The family is still coming together saying, we want to know what exactly is being taught and what's being done to my kid, because as a family, we want to be able to decide.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reaction that you're seeing right now.
That's a really good explanation. I'm gonna do a really bad analogy, but I remember when COVID hit and there was this big debate over, were we gonna have college sports, right? So COVID hit in, early 2020, and by fall of 2020, major conferences had canceled, their sports, and it was the athletes that had to step up and say, hey, we want to play. We think we can be safe. We want to play. And it was just curious to me to watch all the different stakeholders in college athletics and say, well, what about the season ticket holders? What about the boosters? What about the athletes? What about the coaches? What about the, dare I say it, the sponsors? There's just lots of things to sort of think about. And it seems to me that good decisions, not every constituent's going to be happy with every decision, but you ought to take into account as many constituents as possible. And it just seems strange to me in the area of education that anybody would make a decision and say, well, let's dismiss the parents. Like, that just seems not a good constituent to try to dismiss, because as we've seen, parents, rightly so, are still very protective of their children. And I was probably an overprotective dad, as I look back on it, but that's our role as parents. We're supposed to protect our children, and see that they get a good outcome. But almost like a country, if you're not protecting your citizens as a parent, if you're not protecting your children, you're not a very good parent.
Well, your kid better than anybody else.
That's true too. Yeah.
You're going to know that they like a certain type of peanut butter more than they like another certain type. And they like grape jelly instead of strawberry jelly.
Yeah.
Like all the different, you know them down to a precise, and you love them to a precise person. And that's where I believe we're seeing, okay, because of that, we're gonna do everything we can for their best. And because I know them best, I'm gonna fight for their best.
That makes total sense.
Really good. Yeah.
So Dan, you're not a parent.
Not a parent. I got a dog though.
Give us your take on this conversation as a non-parent.
I'm 32 years old, and I definitely know that there's been times where social media affects me. So I'm like, there's no way that a 13-year-old, 16-year-old is not affected by it. So yeah, I mean, limiting time. I think not putting your kids on there is probably handicapping them a little bit. They need to learn how to operate in the world. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, I couldn't imagine having social media to this extent when I was 16. I mean, just the trouble that I got into, I'm sure I would have recorded. I'm sure I would have recorded everything I did.
Wreck. I would have been more of a train wreck.
Yeah, I mean, like you're not thinking at a high level yet. You know what I mean? You're 16. You know what I mean? You're gonna bump your head. So I feel bad for him. I think I'm the last generation that kind of grew up with it, but not as much. Like we had cell phones, but we didn't have Instagram. We had MySpace pages. We had Zanga. If you guys remember that.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was, it was accessible, but not
weren't quite there.
Yeah, weren't quite there. I remember AIM chat, the AOL chat coming out.
That's right. That's right.
But now, I mean, if you have a business or anything like that, or even just, I mean, not having an Instagram is kind of crazy. You know what I mean? Like,
the issue with tech is that technology is trying to solve every problem. And because of that, it's led us to all of these great things.
Yeah.
Like we are more efficient and more effective than we've ever been, but it will not solve the problem of our humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And it's trying to.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real tension that we're seeing today.
Yeah.
Is, hey, no, we can create utopia, or we can create something much greater than any of us.
Yeah.
And I think we're still, we will never be able to solve the problem of our humanity.
Yeah.
And we have to be just real with ourselves to go, no, there's something bigger out there that we're going to need.
Just grown so big. I mean, probably like the biggest concern, like for my parents when I was 13 on the internet was like, oh, am I going to come across some porn or something, But now it's like the social media, you know what I mean? Like that's a totally different thing. I mean, there's sexuality stuff on there too, but it's like just what it's doing to the esteem and the like comparisons that you're doing. That's a totally different thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's driving emotion, but it's also driving financial activity, meaning, hey, I'm going to be able to buy drugs as easy as possible. And it's giving, because you're giving access, it's giving access to both good and bad.
Yeah.
And that's just what you have to know as a parent.
So you are super passionate about this topic, Matt. You are super credible. I mean, you've given us some very crisp, clear answers to some tough questions about what's going on. You also wrote a book. That book is called Parent Chat, the technology chat for every family and parenting in a tech world. Yeah. Why do parents need this book? What's it tell them?
So there's actually two books there. Parent Chat's one, and Parenting in a Tech World is another.
Those are two books.
Yeah, so I've written two books in this area, which the Parent Chat book is really, how do you have that conversation with your child about technology? Parenting in a Tech World, you are the first generation of parents that are trying to parent through technology and with technology. So it is more of a handbook. So the first one is, how do you have the conversation? Like we're getting ready to introduce tech, but then what are really the different things that need to be in place? We go much more in depth with the Parenting in a Tech World.
Wow.
And we even give you resources and a bunch of other things beyond the book. There's even a Facebook group out there called Parenting in a Tech World. Today it has 190,000 parents in it. And as you can imagine, they all have their own little flavor of what should be happening.
Yeah.
But we try to keep it as positive as possible and as informative as possible. And it's a great resource for parents out there. So if you're not a reader and you're like, hey, I want to ask some questions and interact, go to the Facebook group.
Facebook group. Yeah.
But yeah, it is something that I have been very passionate about. And you can go see a couple different resources that I've created because of it.
This may be an unfair question, but if you had one piece of advice to parents today with technology and their kids, what would it be?
Go ask your kid, can you teach me how? Can you teach me how that app works? Can you teach me how that video game works? Can you teach me how this device works? And what you'll see is you'll start to see technology through the lens of your child. And because of that, you will be able to give them purpose. And without purpose, you can't have accountability. And without purpose, you can't really get them to the places that you want them to go. And the way that starts is by asking the question, can you teach me how? And when you do that, you'll actually build a better relationship with your kid. And because of that, they'll trust you more. And when they trust you, then guess what? You'll just be a better parent. So at the end of the day, you know how to do this. You know how to ask the question. Just go ask your kid, can you teach me how?
That's good. Love it. Love it. How can people learn more about Bark as a solution?
So it's bark.us. So you can go online. You can see, you sign up, go get the 7-day free trial, try it out yourself. And that way, so it's bark.us, not .com, not .tech or anything else. If that's really confusing to you, then you probably need it. But just put in bark.us.
Bark.us. And the books, plural, Parent Chat, the technology chat for every family, period.
Yep.
Second book, Parenting in a Tech World, Amazon.
They're
the normal places.
They're all over the place.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. So I would imagine, based on this conversation, Matt, and kind of your expertise and credibility in this area, some of our listeners might want to follow you, get in touch with you, engage with you. How can they do that?
Well, I don't hide very well online. Nobody does, sorry. No, it's at Matt McKee, MCKEE. So MATT, MCKEE. I actually put up daily tips for parents, both on Twitter and on Instagram. And I'm at Matt McKee on both platforms. So you can interact with me there. If you've got any thoughts, or I love that 14-year-olds have found the post and they interact there as well.
Yeah.
So that's what's kind of fun, is seeing the world through the eyes of the teenagers going, what do you mean on average I only spend 153 minutes a day on social media? That's really low. What are they, beginners? All these different comments that are happening. So
gotcha.
I get to interact with all kinds of people on those
I get
platforms.
my little screen time report, every week.
That's the worst.
And I always want it to go down.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if that's good or not, but I'm always like, less time in front of the screen. But
okay, let's talk about time real quick before we end.
Yeah.
Okay, don't worry about the time. Worry about the purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you can look at what was the purpose of me being on my device, or what is the purpose of my kids being on that device, that is a much better question than how much time did they spend on the device. Because I could make the argument that your kids should be spending more time on tech, not less time on tech, depending on the purpose of why they're doing it.
Yeah. That's good. That's great. Well, that leads us to kind of our last question here, Matt, which is, Dan and I are really passionate about conversations with people that are trying to make an impact, and, not necessarily an impact on people that are just like them, right? And so I love what Bark is doing. I love what you're doing, because you don't care the size, shape, or age of the child, right? But we need to be protecting kids, and we need to be informing and enabling and mobilizing parents. In light of the Good Samaritan, which is where this podcast gets its origin, which was the Samaritan crossing the road and serving and helping heal a Jewish person. And at the time, there couldn't be two ethnic groups more at odds with one another than the Jews and the Samaritans. I look at technology. In fact, it just happened yesterday regarding the plane incident, of the musicians, where the first reaction is just to trash, the people. And technology can connect us, inform us, make us more efficient, make us more productive. very often I'm seeing it used to shame, humiliate, not lift up, but tear down. Even people that are just like us, right? So we might say parents, people in the church, whatever it might be. Give us one thing that we can do in a technology world, with technology, on technology, to be good Samaritans, to actually serve people, to actually do something good.
So today, 97% of text messages are still read. 97% of text messages. If I send you a text, Dan, more than likely you'll at least see it and you'll read it and you'll go, "Hey, oh, that's interesting." I believe if you could get as many people that you feel comfortable with, if you could get their cell phone number, friends of yours, I'm not asking you to ask strangers, but at least once a week, just go, "Hey, how can I pray for you today?" Showing empathy to a community, utilizing technology to be able to do so, will only drive in-person relationships, so that when we see each other, what will happen is, hey, not only did I receive that prayer request, but I pray for that prayer request, and it shows that I care for you on a much more needed level than just liking something on Instagram or something happening there. Because more than likely, they're not going to see it. So you have to go where people will notice, and you have to go where people are going to read and be able to interact. Today, still to this day, it's text messages.
Yeah.
So if you're a leader and you really care about people, get in their text messages and ask them if you can pray or how you can help them. And then, I hate to say it, but actually do it and show as much empathy as possible.
There you go.
Awesome. There it is. Matt McKee from Bark Technology. Author, speaker, entrepreneur, investor, and ordained pastor. Thank you so much for joining us on the Walking Through Samaria podcast and for enlightening our listeners. I mean, I just heard some very basic, simple answers and steps and perspectives that I think will be amazingly helpful to the parents out there.
Thank you.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm your host, Dan Riveros, with my co-host,
David Hendrickson.
And we had a very special guest, our friend,
Matt McKee,
on today. Hey, man, we'll see y'all soon.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Talk to you next time.
See ya.
For more content like this, visit us at givingcompany.com. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Walking Through Samaria.